Ladies and gentlemen, we find ourselves once again convened in this arena of discourse, and I must confess, it is a privilege to address you. The fragility of existence has made itself known to me in recent days. Indeed, your humble narrator has navigated a series of health scares that serve as a stark reminder of our own mortality. Yet, I am alive, I am revitalized, and I have returned to the fray. It is imperative, now more than ever, that you ensure your subscription to this channel is active, for the narrative we are about to dissect is shifting with such velocity that to look away is to lose the thread entirely. We must remain vigilant. Before we start, make sure subscribe our channel, like the video, and let us know what you think in comments below. And my God, let us turn our critical gaze immediately toward the deluge of propaganda currently emanating from the Women's National Basketball Association Players Association. We are witnessing a masterclass in obfuscation, a desperate attempt to manipulate the narrative that borders on the theatrical. We have critical commentary from the likes of Sophie Cunningham, and we have the sobering analysis of Lobo to dissect. But we must begin at the source of this current malaise, the low-rent, intellectually dishonest posturing from the players' union itself. I have articulated this sentiment previously, but it bears repeating with increased urgency. The manner in which these athletes are presenting themselves, the optics of their collective behavior, is actively diminishing the prestige of their own organization. They are reducing a professional league to the aesthetic and operational equivalent of a minor league system, a double-A baseball atmosphere fraught with amateurism. This strategy, if one can even dignify it with such a term, reeks of desperation. It projects an image of a collective body grasping for leverage that simply does not exist, attempting to execute a power play that is entirely divorced from the economic realities of the marketplace. The WNBA Players Association recently disseminated a petition, a document that many have already analyzed, but which we must place centrally upon our dissecting table before we move to the more substantive revelations. The union is exhorting fans to sign our petition, a plea that seems to operate under the delusion that Adam Silver, Kathy Engelbert, and the broader hierarchy of the NBA and WNBA ownership groups are going to be swayed by a vocal yet numerically insignificant minority of the fan base. They are appealing to the old WNBA fandom, asking them to step into the breach. The text of this petition claims that after months of stalling in negotiations, the team owners continue to ignore player demands and are effectively jeopardizing the future of women's professional basketball. Herein lies the fundamental problem, the rot at the core of their argument. Any astute observer, any fan who has been paying attention to the actual numbers rather than the rhetoric, knows this to be a categorical falsehood. It is a lie. We have seen the financial figures. We have seen the money placed upon the table by the ownership. The owners have quite literally put their money where their mouths are. Yet, we are subjected to this ridiculous, inflammatory rhetoric that seeks to paint a picture of benevolent labor against tyrannical capital, a narrative that collapses under the slightest scrutiny. Consider the absurdity shared recently regarding the viewership drivers of this league. The Players Association had the audacity to suggest that the viewing public is tuning in to witness the exploits of Alyssa Thomas. Now, let us be uncomfortably honest. Alyssa Thomas stands as one of the most profoundly unlikable athletes I have ever had the displeasure of covering, discussing, or musing upon. The notion that she serves as a primary draw for the audience is devoid of factual basis. There is, quite simply, nobody tuning in specifically for Alyssa Thomas. If one were to generously project a viewership of 2 million, perhaps a fraction, 150,000 souls, might be there for her, and that is a charitable estimate. She is not a bargaining chip. She is, in many respects, a liability to the league's growth. When we speak of wrecking the league, we must look at how figures like Thomas have conducted themselves toward the Indiana Fever fan base, toward the supporters of Caitlin Clark, and indeed, toward Caitlin Clark herself. This hostility is not merely interpersonal drama, It is bad business. It is a rejection of the very catalyst that has revitalized the entire enterprise. We must acknowledge the unvarnished truth. None of this, none of the attention, none of the revenue influx is happening without Caitlin Clark. The players would not be staring down the barrel of a proposal offering 9 times the salary by the end of a new CBA were it not for the Caitlin Clark effect on the media rights deal. That valuation does not exist in a vacuum. It is inextricably tethered to her presence. So, when the union puts out statements ignoring this reality, what are we to conclude? It is a lie. It is a fabrication born of resentment. It demonstrates that the league's established hierarchy still cannot move past a deep-seated animosity toward the very player who is saving them. It is madness. And the result is that the league is officially hemorrhaging support. The astute fans are rejecting the protect women's sports sanitized version of events. They are rejecting the sports media spin. They are looking at the cold, hard numbers, and when the math does not align with the rhetoric, they are calling it what it is: absolute nonsense. This brings us to the revelations from Sophie Cunningham, whose recent stance on the collective bargaining agreement negotiations signals a red flag of monumental proportions. Her comments serve as a harbinger of a potential catastrophe. We are looking at the very real possibility that a lockout will become the operational reality if the spring arrives without a signed agreement. Sophie Cunningham seems to view this not merely as a possibility, but as a likely outcome. During a recent appearance on the Show Me Something podcast, Cunningham offered a candid assessment that cuts through the union's polished veneer. She stated quite bluntly, "Our CBA is so dumb right now that it's headed towards a lockout." When pressed on whether there had been progress, her response was telling, "No, honestly, nothing." She described receiving weekly emails from the Players Association's side, characterizing them with a repetition of the word dumb that echoes the frustration of a rational actor trapped in an irrational process. Now, you are aware of my admiration for Sophie Cunningham. I am a massive proponent of her game and her demeanor. But her frustration points to a larger disconnect. The players are being offered a substantial amount of money. However, the specific demand regarding revenue sharing, that insistence on a massive slice of the gross revenue, is simply not going to materialize. It is a non-starter. Adam Silver and the NBA ownership are currently engaged in an effort to buy back the 16% of the league that was sold off to outside investors, entities outside the basketball sphere. Anyone paying attention to the intricate financial plumbing of this league realizes that the revenue-sharing model the players are demanding, specifically the figures cited around 30% of gross revenue, is a pipe dream. It is entirely divorced from reality. It is not realistic, and it is not going to happen. Into this chaotic fray steps Rebecca Lobo, a voice of significant weight, who recently noted that a deal is currently on the table for the players. Her assessment? It looks like a pretty amazing deal. Yet she observes that the sides seem further apart than logic would dictate. She expressed hope, but her optimism was tempered by a serious concern. Some of the rhetoric I've heard from their side has been a little troublesome. She is referring, of course, to the players. Lobo went on to articulate a sentiment that many of us have felt, but few within the establishment dare to say. When a deal is presented that offers over $1 million max salary and includes revenue-sharing components, to characterize that as a slap in the face, to use such charged, victim-centric language, is a strategic error of the highest order. Lobo noted, "I'm worried the players might be getting to the point where they're losing support from the public." I would argue she is being too conservative in her estimation. It is not that they might lose the public. It is over. They have lost the public. Specifically, they have lost the segment of the public that is not blindly paying attention, the segment that isn't supporting the players for alternative, non-basketball reasons. There is undeniably an agenda-driven faction of the support base that has nothing to do with the economics of sport. They are content with the league being carried, subsidized, and propped up indefinitely, regardless of whether it loses money. There exists a group of fans, the remnants of the old WNBA fandom, who believe the league possesses an inherent right to be artificially sustained forever. Failing or not, profitable or not, they believe the checks should keep clearing. And why? Because of the identity politics involved, because you have a demographic of brave, stunning, and courageous individuals playing basketball. I am not going to sugarcoat this. You are hearing this directly from me. This is the reality of the discourse. You have people pontificating about how billionaires can afford to lose money, so they ought to just prop up the league as a moral imperative. This is the height of entitlement. You have individuals running their mouths, making demands on other people's capital, money that is not theirs, while being perfectly content to accept handouts without generating the requisite return on investment. The math does not work out. The economics do not sustain this worldview. And now we face the specter of a lockout. Sophie Cunningham has said it out loud. We are headed towards a lockout. This is a bullet aimed directly at the heart of the league. And one must wonder if the players truly understand the precariousness of their position. Or perhaps, in a more cynical reading, they do understand. Perhaps they are being spiteful. Perhaps there is an anger driving this, a resentment that obscures their own self-interest. The players seem to know, deep down, a truth that is rarely spoken in polite company. There are, in reality, perhaps only 12 likable players in the entire league. I said it. There are roughly a dozen, maybe 15 players who do not rub the general public the wrong way, who do not induce a sense of nausea when one attempts to consume their product. This is the harsh reality. Sophie Cunningham is one of those likable few. If the majority of the league conducted themselves with her level of professionalism, with her approach to the game, the fan base would be exponentially larger. There are players who do this, who are marketable and engaging, but they are the exception, not the rule. For the vast majority, it feels as though the enterprise is about everything except basketball. And in a professional basketball league, that is a fatal flaw. This is the problem. We are watching a league hemorrhage support because the players are making a power play that makes them look desperate, demanding money that the economics do not support, all while alienating the very fans who are finally tuning in. The rhetoric from the union calling the owner's offer a slap in the face while ignoring the ninefold increase in potential earnings is not just bad negotiation. It is a public relations suicide pact. They are asking the public to ignore the reality of the Caitlin Clark effect, to ignore the reality of the balance sheet, and to support them based on a petition that is founded on demonstrably false premises. They claim the owners are stalling, yet the money, life-changing money, is sitting there waiting to be taken. We are witnessing a clash between ideology and economics, between a narrative of victimization and the hard reality of business. The players' union is behaving as if they are negotiating from a position of supreme leverage, acting as if the league cannot survive without their specific demands being met. But as we have discussed, the viewership is driven by a select few. The revenue is driven by a specific phenomenon. And the old fandom, the one they are desperately appealing to with these petitions, is not large enough to sustain the financial future they feel they are entitled to. When you have a player like Sophie Cunningham, who is in the trenches, coming out and calling the union's communication dumb, calling the trajectory a lockout, it signals that the internal cohesion is fracturing. The players are being led down a garden path by leadership that prioritizes political posturing over financial gain. They are being told to reject a $1 million salary capability because it doesn't meet an ideological purity test regarding revenue sharing that simply isn't mathematically feasible. The NBA owners, Adam Silver, and the WNBA leadership are not villains in this scenario. They are businessmen trying to stabilize a volatile asset. They are trying to buy back equity to streamline the business. They have subsidized this league for decades. To now be accused of jeopardizing the future of the sport by the very people they have been paying is an irony so rich it is almost indigestible. The statement regarding Alyssa Thomas is perhaps the most glaring example of this delusion. To claim that she is the reason people are tuning in is to insult the intelligence of the consumer. It is gaslighting. Pure and simple. The consumers are tuning in for the stars who transcend the game, for the excitement, for the narrative of greatness, primarily driven by Caitlin Clark. When the union tries to elevate unlikable, polarizing figures to that same pedestal, they only serve to highlight the disconnect between their perception and the public's reality. This league is at a crossroads. On one path lies financial stability, a massive increase in player salaries, and a sustainable future built on the back of actual revenue growth. On the other path lies a lockout, a potential work stoppage driven by hubris and bad advice, and a continued alienation of the massive new audience that has just arrived. The players seem intent on choosing the latter. They are letting the rhetoric of the old fandom dictate their future rather than the economics of the new reality. It is a tragedy in motion. A league that has finally found its footing is being dragged back down by the very people who stand to benefit most from its ascent. The players look desperate, the union looks incompetent, and the fans, the smart fans, are seeing right through it. They are not signing the petition. They are not buying the propaganda. They are looking at the numbers, and they are shaking their heads. As we move forward, keep a close watch on these developments. If Sophie Cunningham's prediction holds true and we find ourselves in a lockout come spring, it will be a self-inflicted wound of historic proportions. It will be the result of a union that refused to take yes for an answer, that preferred to fight a culture war rather than sign a lucrative peace treaty. I will continue to monitor this situation with the scrutiny it deserves. The health scares are behind me, and my focus is singular. We will not let the propaganda go unchecked. We will not let the numbers be obscured by rhetoric. We will tell the story as it is, not as the Players Association wishes it to be. Tell me what you think. Is the union leading these players off a cliff? Is the old fandom mentality holding the league back? Or is there a method to this madness that simply eludes the rational observer? Peace. I am out. Until next time. Thanks for watching the show. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. The drama is far from over, and you will not want to miss a moment of the analysis as we navigate these turbulent waters. The future of professional women's basketball hangs in the balance, and we will be here to document every twist and turn. Make sure you are subscribed. Make sure you are paying attention. The game is changing, and not everyone is going to survive the shift. We are witnessing the collision of entitlement and reality, and the fallout will be spectacular. The dumb emails, the petitions, the inflatable rats, it is all theater. But the money is real. The lockout threat is real, and the decision facing these players is the most consequential in the history of their sport. Will they take the deal, or will they burn the house down in a fit of pique? Only time will tell. But rest assured, we will be watching.